Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. This content is not made for children and has been created by your girl Anna B for conversations and to bring awareness to certain cases. Viewer discretion is advised. Tracy Adams suffered horribly on August 27, 2017, just 10 days after her 39th birthday. The mother of five, who was described as outgoing, loving, and caring, ran into her home on West Volusia Avenue past her 15-year-old son with her dress torn and the top part of her body so badly burnt that he couldn't even recognize his own mother. Tracy ran straight to the bathroom, banging on the door. Her daughter was inside and she opened up. "I can't believe he tried to kill me. Call the police. He tried to kill me." "Who tried to kill you?" her daughter asked. "Bernard. Bernard set me on fire. Bernard tried to kill me." Tracy began to pour water on herself as her daughter called 911. The call came in at 8:31 p.m. It was a Sunday evening.
So she was on fire? She's on fire. Her skin is, she's missing skin. She said somebody did this to her?
I believe so. Yes, somebody did this to her.
EMT Matthew Mitchell and his partner arrived first. Matthew described turning on West Volusia Avenue, noticing something orange, what he assumed to be a light. However, as he got closer, he noticed that flames were still going over the roof of Tracy's house. When EMT Matthew first laid eyes on Tracy, he said she was waddling towards him and asking for help. Tracy had been burned so badly that her skin began to fall off her arms and her legs. Matthew thought she was a white woman, it was so bad. It wasn't until later that he learned that she was black. Though Tracy was calm when she was in the ambulance, she was suffering so bad that she asked the EMT and the paramedic to cut her lips off because they were falling into her mouth, blocking her airway. In need of urgent care at a burn center, Tracy was airlifted to the closest one, at Orlando Regional Medical Center, with severe burns to her upper torso, upper extremities, face, and her head. Before she was airlifted, she was able to speak. And she told the EMTs what happened to her. She said she had gotten home from work. She was getting out of her car when someone came out of the bushes, doused her with gasoline, and lit her on fire. Tracy also thought she had been shot. She said the man that did this to her, his name was Bernard. Tracy was assessed while in the ambulance from head to toe, but there was no gunshot wound discovered by first responders. At the time of this crime, Tracy, her two daughters, her son, and his father all lived at the home on West Volusia Avenue that Tracy was renting. Tracy was not romantically involved with her son's father. He was just renting a room out at the time. The investigation began with interviews with Tracy's family members that were on scene. Her daughter, Quanisha, her son, Jonathan Jr., and his father, Jonathan Sr. Quanisha recalls hearing glass breaking while she was in the shower before her mother came banging on the bathroom door. Jonathan Sr., laying in his room, also heard Tracy running in, screaming, alerting everyone that she was set on fire. Jonathan Jr. confirmed all of the above. All of them heard Tracy say Bernard had done this to her. Quanisha advised Detective Jacob Hudson that Bernard is the father of her cousin's child. She didn't know what exactly had happened to her mother, but she knew she was burnt somehow. She didn't know why Bernard did this, but she knew he was crazy. Bernard Leonard Thomas was well known to Tracy and her family. He had been around the family for years, attended cookouts and birthday parties, and actually had grilled food at a party the day before this crime was committed. Tracy was allowing Bernard to live in the gazebo that was in her backyard. This was supposed to be just a temporary arrangement so that he could get on his feet, but it was a temporary arrangement that lasted almost a year. Though Bernard was a family friend and had children with someone that was possibly blood related to Tracy, he still had romantic feelings towards her. But she didn't feel the same way. She was not at all interested in a romantic relationship with Bernard and was actually trying to distance herself from Bernard. She would ask him, "When are you going to leave?" And she had actually recently told him it was time to go. Everyone that the police interviewed confirmed that Tracy and Bernard were not in a romantic relationship. Now, Bernard wasn't just interested in Tracy. This was an obsession. He always wanted to know where Tracy was at and what she was doing. If he didn't know where Tracy was, he would make up a story to try to get people to tell him her location. And once he found out, he'd show up and blow up. The interior of Tracy's car was completely burned out, leaving only the metal frames of the seats. Fire Marshal Murray McDonald located a plastic Gatorade bottle lying next to the gazebo without a lid and was partially burnt around the rim, and it smelled of gasoline. The fire marshal's investigation concluded what Tracy had already told everybody. This was intentional. Bernard had thrown gasoline on Tracy as she sat in the driver's seat of her vehicle, shot her, and fled. The fire so intense, it caused a secondary fire to the home. The day following the incident, shortly after 1 p.m., a male named Eric Thomas, who was not at all related to Bernard Thomas, went to the police department and requested to speak to Detective Hudson about Tracy's case. Eric went to high school with Tracy. The two had recently reconnected and began spending time together. In his interview, he informed Detective Hudson that Tracy had been at his house from the early morning hours until later that day on August 27th, 2017. Eric shared that shortly after Tracy had gotten there, he started hearing sounds outside. And then he heard someone kicking on the wall that was adjacent to his son's bedroom. He went outside to see what was going on and where the noise was coming from when he heard his dogs barking. He then heard his chain link fence rattle as if somebody had jumped over it. At that time, he just assumed that, hey, maybe it was a cat that came into the yard. But not only did he hear the weird sounds and the rattling of his fence, he had started to get phone calls from a blocked number. When he answered, there would be nobody on the line. At least they wouldn't say anything. After going back to sleep, Eric woke up around 8 a.m. He started his normal daily routine with cleaning up his dogs outside and inspecting his property when his friend, who was also at his home, asked him about a Corona beer bottle, which was weird because nobody drank Corona and there was no reason for that bottle to be where it was. The bottle was broken and it smelled of gasoline. Eric provided pictures to the detective of where the bottle was found on his property and even provided the actual bottle. He went on to explain that on one of the calls from the private number, he answered, and it was a female on the other end. She had asked where Tracy was. Eric told the woman he didn't know who Tracy was. In response, the woman told Eric that he did know Tracy and then hung up. A few minutes later, the woman calls back, again telling him that he did know Tracy. And of course, when asked who she was, she didn't identify herself, but she did say that Tracy's car was parked in front of Eric's house, which it was. At this point, Tracy is feeling uncomfortable. She goes, retrieves her stun gun from the car, and she told Eric that she believed Bernard was behind the calls. How did Bernard get Eric's phone number, though? Tracy thought Bernard had stolen her phone, gotten into her Facebook account, and obtained Eric's phone number. It was getting late, so Tracy decided it was time to go home and check on her kids. Eric said she left his house around 7 p.m. Not too long afterwards, he was alerted by Tracy's family about what happened to her. Eric further explained that at 9:37 p.m., that night of the crime, the private number called him again. He didn't answer. They called back. Eric answered this time. A male voice said, "You're next." 11 a.m., the morning that Eric showed up to the police department, the day he gave his statement, he received another private call. Again, a male voice was on the other end. This time, the male identified himself, and it was Bernard. Bernard asked Eric what was going on between him and Tracy. "What you mean?" Eric replied. Eric mentioned the Corona bottle that he found on his property and that he knew what was going on with Tracy. Bernard told Eric that he didn't know what was going on and that he needed to talk to Sheriff Chitwood. The call ends, and that was the last time Eric received a call from a private number. The following day, August 29th, Detective Hudson received a call from the hospital advising that the attending doctor had noticed that Tracy did sustain a gunshot wound to her shoulder. The injury was originally missed due to the extensive burn injuries that she had sustained. Detective Hudson learned that Tracy's gunshot injury was to her left upper shoulder area and had entered from the side of her shoulder. This was consistent with Tracy being seated in the driver's seat of her car and shot by somebody standing outside the driver's side. Additional interviews were conducted in the following days, and one of those interviews were with Sarah Lynn Dobson. She told Detective Hudson that Tracy was at her house around 5:30, 6 o'clock p.m. on the day of the incident. Tracy had come over to get a plate of food and was only there for about 10 minutes. While Tracy was there, guess who pulled up? Bernard. Now, Sarah Lynn had seen Bernard before, but she didn't know why he was at her house. He arrived driving his white van and he asked to speak to Tracy. Tracy goes outside. As she's sitting in her vehicle, she's talking to Bernard, who's standing at the driver's side of her car. He didn't appear upset or angry, and she didn't know what they had spoken about. Bernard gets in his white van and leaves. Shortly afterwards, Tracy leaves. Sadly, on this day, Detective Hudson received another call from the hospital. This time it was Dr. Michael Gray. He was calling to advise that Tracy Adams had succumbed to her injuries. She had gone in respiratory failure and suffered from cardiac arrest when she passed. 3 days later, the autopsy of Tracy Adams was conducted. The cause of death was complications from thermal injuries. The projectile lodged inside Tracy's body was collected and held for evidence. Meanwhile, the hunt for Bernard Leonard Thomas was still ongoing.
Back in August in DeLand, the woman's killer still has not been caught. News 6's Lauren Korn has the latest information on the story tonight.
Ginger, this is just a terrible story all around. I just spoke with the daughter. She came here to the police department just to speak with us. Of course, she's heartbroken, but she wants to remember her mother, want everyone to know that she was just a kind woman, and she wants justice to be served.
Very caring, outgoing, loving.
Just some words of a very long list of how Desaria Heath feels about her mother.
We all just a family, a normal family. From the back of the house to try to save my siblings because her last thought was that, oh my God, my house is on fire, my kids are in the house. That's the only thing I can think about.
Adams died in the hospital on Sunday. Police say they have zeroed in on her killer.
We do have a suspect, and the case is active and ongoing.
Anything you want to say to this person who took your mother?
I just hope you come to your senses, at least turn yourself in and think about, you have children yourself. You know us. You know how much our mother means to us. You know that was the only person we had.
A search warrant was conducted on Bernard's phone number. It was revealed that this man had called Tracy's phone a total of 31 times over a 7-day period prior to the incident and never never called it again after the crime occurred. Cell phone tower mapping also placed Bernard at the crime scene. When Detective Hudson spoke to Tracy's niece on September 27th, she informed him that the day before her aunt was attacked, the family threw a birthday party at her house. Bernard was there along with many family members, Tracy included. Bernard had cooked on the grill for the party. She didn't notice much, if any, interaction between Tracy and Bernard. She also advised that Tracy left before Bernard, and when Tracy left, she left her phone behind. Because Bernard was going back to Tracy's house, she gave Tracy's phone to him and figured he'd give it back to her aunt. When she texted her the next morning, she didn't respond, and this was odd because her auntie always texts back, quickly at that. Also on that day, she was out shopping with her aunt, who continued to get calls back to back. Tracy ignored most of the calls, but when she did answer, her niece heard Bernard's voice, and she heard him tell Tracy, "If I can't have you, can't nobody have you." We know why Tracy didn't text back, and we now know how Bernard got Eric's phone number. Friends, this man Bernard was able to run loose until he was arrested 2 years later in November of 2019 in Brevard County, Florida. He was arrested on unrelated charges and booked into their county jail. Detectives traveled to Brevard County to attempt to interview Bernard. When Bernard was asked what happened with Tracy, he said, "I have no idea. I'm going to stop this conversation with y'all until I have a lawyer. That's all I can say. I was down south, and I'm going to leave it there." Bernard was extradited back to Volusia County the following month to face charges of first-degree murder, arson of a dwelling, and arson of an occupied vehicle. He entered pleas of not guilty and sat in the county jail until his trial commenced 4 years later.
Lock the door, she told him to call 911 to get help. And then she told her daughter, who didn't do it when she asked. When the daughter asked, she told her daughter, Bernard. And remember, all the witnesses from the family said there were no other Bernards in this victim's life. This was the only Bernard Thomas, the defendant in this case. So what I'm asking you to do is I'm asking you to hear Tracy Adams. I'm asking you to hear her. And I ask for a guilty verdict for the man who shot, doused her in gasoline, and lit her lights. Thank you.
Tracy suffered. She didn't know who attacked her. You heard testimony that it was dark in that area. The person that attacked her from that area came from the area of the gazebo where she knew Bernard lived. She had recently seen Bernard at Sarah Lynn Dobson's house. She associated that area with Bernard and assumed it was him. Someone committed this heinous attack on Tracy Adams, but it was not Bernard Thomas. Find Bernard Thomas not guilty.
Following a 4-day trial in January of 2023, Bernard Leonard Thomas was found guilty by a jury of 6 women and 6 men who deliberated for 2 hours and 45 minutes.
State Florida versus Bernard Thomas, case number 2019-102854, CFDL. The verdict to count 1, the jury found the defendant Bernard Thomas as follows as to count 1 of the indictment. Guilty of the crime of first-degree murder as charged in the indictment.
I just want justice for Tracy. I knew Tracy for 39 years. And one thing I know her not to be is a lawyer. She would not accuse somebody falsely. And she only stated the truth. My purpose for doing these 3 days is to make sure and pray that Tracy Adams got justice, because what happened to her should not happen to anyone.
The judge sentenced Bernard to the mandatory life in prison on the murder count, which is to be followed by 30 years each on the other 2 charges. The judge said she recognized Bernard's attorney's argument that A life sentence meant he would never be released, but the judge said she wanted the 30 years to follow the life sentence just in case something happened with the life sentence. And she didn't say this, but she's probably referring to the possibility of Bernard being successful in an appeal. I want to ensure that you never get out after committing the murder of Tracy Adams and her dying the way she did.
That death was one of the most heinous, atrocious, and cruel ways that somebody can die. And she had to live 13 days with those injuries. I'm hoping that she didn't feel much. I am choosing to sentence you to consecutive sentences. It's a mandatory life sentence for count 1, which I will impose. And if for any reason something should happen to that, I'm sentencing you to a consecutive 30-year sentence on both counts 2 and 3. They will run concurrent or at the same time, but they will run consecutive to count 1.
Bernard Leonard Thomas was admitted into the Florida Department of Corrections on January 23rd, 2023, 5 days before his birthday, and I'm for sure he wasn't able to grill out or have a birthday party. He is currently housed at the DeSoto Annex in Arcadia, Florida. In February of 2024, the 5th District Court of Appeals affirmed his conviction. Tracy leaves behind a large family, 5 children, grandchildren, and a memory of her kindness, her love, and willingness to help those around her. Her family will remain in my prayers, and may Tracy Adams rest in power.